Socrates died for asking questions. The claim haunts the mind as a paradox you can live with. If inquiry is the most dangerous act, it is also the most liberating. What if the path to wisdom is not certainty, but the courage to keep asking, even when the answer seems to endanger you? Questioning, in Socrates' hand, is not a debate tactic, but a way of living with ambiguity, a practice that refuses to settle for the easy conclusion. To grasp his method, we need to step into the room where questions become a way of seeing. He didn't present a doctrine to memorize. He handed us a habit, a discipline of attentive doubt. Elenchus, the cross-examining drill, sounds harsh, yet it is not about winning an argument. It is about exposing the seams where our beliefs fray. Do we know what justice is, or do we merely know what we call justice when it suits us? The first rule is simple. Start with a clear definition. Socrates would ask, "What is virtue?" and then demand a precise account. If the other person replies with a general, hazy word, he presses for the boundaries. If the boundaries shift under pressure, the definition collapses. The goal is not to humiliate, but to illuminate the gaps. To reveal that much of what passes for knowledge rests on assumptions we rarely articulate. In that moment, the classroom becomes a mirror. The question asks us to look at ourselves as much as at the other speaker. This is where the art reveals its moral core. Socrates refused the certainty that puffs up the ego. He chose the much harder route: to acknowledge what you do not know, to name the unknown, to live with persistent questions. The paradox is enthralling. The more you question, the more you realize how much you have yet to learn. Yet this is not a weakness. It is a form of strength that keeps the mind supple, capable of adjusting when new evidence arrives, capable of abandoning a cherished belief when it fails the test of reason. Consider the famous line, "The unexamined life is not worth living." It sounds stern until you hear the invitation beneath it. It is not a sermon against feeling. It is a plea for a life where feeling meets reason, where choices are not inherited but earned through deliberate scrutiny. The Socratic method trains attention. It slows the autopilot of opinion so that you can hear the tension between what you think and what the world shows you. This is not a negation of faith, but a demand that faith be tested by argument, that values stay awake instead of drifting asleep in comfortable narratives. Now, let the exploration move from classroom with marble columns to the alleys of everyday life. Imagine a manager deciding on a policy, a parent guiding a child, a citizen facing a public issue. The method can be applied anywhere. Ask for the precise meaning of a claim, request the evidence, reveal hidden assumptions, test for contradictions, and follow the thread until it reaches something testable or humble enough to admit its limits. The beauty of Socratic questioning is that it often yields not a verdict but a better question. And sometimes the best answer is a pause. A moment of quiet listening that changes the direction of the conversation more than any clever retort. But let us hear a counterpoint, a twist that unsettles the comfortable image of the gadfly. Socrates claimed to know nothing of great weight. He professed ignorance as a starting stance, not as a confession of perpetual doubt, but as a strategic posture. If you assume you know nothing in advance, you force all claims to prove themselves anew. The turning point is subtle. Knowledge is not a possession, but a process. The relentless pursuit of clarity becomes a shared activity, a dialogue that invites other minds to test themselves as well. In the humility of this stance lies a surprising power. You no longer own your opinions, you steward them with care, away from dogma and toward truth's fragile edge. In a modern world saturated with information, Socrates' method is not an antiquated relic, but a practical tool. It helps us resist the siren song of confident but unfounded certainty. When a news claim comes with certainty stamped like a seal, the question should be immediate. What is the definition behind this claim? What evidence would prove it false? What is the risk if we take it at face value? The longer you linger in that space, the more you feel the texture of reality as it resists neat boxes. The method teaches us to value process over victory, inquiry over assertion, listening over proclamation. The goal shifts from being right to being capable of seeing more. There's a striking moment when you realize the Socratic approach does not end with a single solution, but with a stance toward truth that never seals the door. Your questions become your compass, guiding you through shifting landscapes of science, politics, and ethics. The questions do not disappear with an answer. They mutate, suggesting new angles, new experiments, new conversations. This is the durable promise of philosophy lived as practice. Thought that remains rigorous, empathy that remains fierce, and curiosity that remains relentless. So how do you begin again? Start with the small, precise questions. Ask for definitions, demand examples, test the implications, and watch where the logic bends under pressure. Listen to the resistance in the other person's voice, because resistance often reveals the most revealing cracks in a belief system. And when you encounter a paradox like the claim that freedom requires obedience, to reason, lean into the tension. Do not resolve it too quickly. Let the tension become your teacher, reminding you that the path to wisdom is paved with uncertainty rather than neat finalities. Socrates would tell us the same thing in a gentler key. The best life is a life of questions that outlast the answers. The power of questioning is not provocation for its own sake, but a discipline that keeps the mind elastic, capable of accommodating nuance, contradiction, and surprise. In the end, the secret of his philosophy is not the cleverest syllogism, but the courage to stay in the conversation with reality, even when the outcome feels unsettled or inconvenient. The method does not demand certainty. It invites responsibility, the responsibility to think clearly, to listen deeply, and to act with integrity once the light of understanding has finally emerged, even if faintly. If you take nothing else from this, take this invitation. Use questions as instruments of care. Care for truth, care for others, and care for your own mind enough to treat it as a living practice. Question what you think you know. Question your own certainty. Question the noise that tells you you must choose sides. In that stubborn, patient practice, you may discover that the oldest philosopher was right in a way no lecture could capture. The path to genuine wisdom begins with a question you are willing to leave open. To begin again, picture the street philosopher as a late commuter, a figure leaning into the fog of ordinary talk and turning it into a map. You ask for the meaning behind a promise, a policy, a hobby, and you watch beliefs hesitate. Then step back into the light of scrutiny. The habit is not a weapon. It is a flashlight that reveals what else lies hidden in the margins of a claim. When you train this eye, you notice the crack in every sentence, the unstated assumption, the shortcut, the fear of looking foolish. The exercise becomes not mockery, but care for accuracy. Care for others who may be harmed by sloppy reasoning. Care for the mind you inhabit every day. Next comes the practical ritual. Define. Example. Consequence. If someone says, "We must do X for justice," you ask, what is X? Can X be defined with ordinary terms? What would count as a counterexample? If the response fills with sentiment, you press for the rule that governs the sentiment. This is not cruelty. It is a form of companionship with truth, a willingness to bear the length of a difficult conversation. The room brightens not with certainty, but with possibility. The possibility that a better policy exists when we remove the glare of dogma. Then the turning point, you realize that questioning is not a solitary sport. It invites others to bring their own questions, and the dialogue becomes a relay race, each person passing a sharper question to the next. We move from a stance of defensiveness to a rhythm of mutual clarification. In this cadence, disagreement stops feeling like attack and starts feeling like labor toward understanding. Finally, the larger implication. A society that questions well is a society that can survive change. It does not fear instability. It tests instability and learns from it. The Socratic method, applied gently, teaches civic humility and collective discernment. The courage to say, "I do not yet know," is the seed of honest reform, of policies that withstand the weight of future facts, of friendships strong enough to revise themselves. Keep asking, not to dominate, but to refine. The path to wisdom is a practice, not a verdict. And every honest question shapes a mind ready to act with clarity when the moment requires it, even if the answer remains elusive. If you hear yourself hurry toward a final word, pause. Sit with the question until it yields another question that unsettles your easy certainty. This is the quiet revolution Socrates asked for, a civilization that prefers the right question to a swift, comfortable conclusion. In the end, the practice returns to a single, faithful habit. Treat truth as a living relation, not a trophy. Let your mind wander with respect, your dialogue be generous, and your ego be small enough to let the world teach you. Then the ancient gadfly becomes a guide, not a tormentor, and the oldest method becomes a map for navigating a future